I don't think we're live, are we?
I don't see it.
We're live on YouTube.
Hey there, YouTube.
We're live on YouTube, but not on X. Let's try this again.
Yep.
All right. We did it. We're live. Welcome back to another episode of Token Narratives. I'm Graham Stone, joined by David Sensel. This is episode 77 of the best token narrative related podcast on the internet. Good morning, David. We're here bright and early because we're going to be accommodating Vlad Kostia of the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. He'll be joining us a little bit later on the show. But we're going to start off with our gut check as usual. The most confusing market in many years, David, is what you wrote in your newsletter, which we'll be publishing.
That was last
week. That was last week, but also this week, no?
Yeah. So I continued on with this theme from last week. Last week's newsletter was called "The Most Confusing Market in Many Years," based off of Blockworks CEO, a quote from Blockworks CEO Yanowitz describing this current market and how himself and I guess all the big movers and shakers that he's in group chats with have described this market. And I think if you look at the chart, if you look at your timeline, Graham, I don't know about yours, but mine, you do. I have seen just a lot of kind of bullish and bearish news and bullish and bearish people. So it continues to be hard to navigate. Consensus is not there on where we're going from here.
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more panic on the timeline. I woke up this morning to one KOL rage quitting. I'm not sure if it was satire.
Oh yeah,
might have been satire. It's hard to tell these days. But let's start off with the bear case, right? So we are at the lower bound of the range that was set from the that massive flash crash. What is that? 2-3 weeks ago now?
10-10.
10-10, the day that will go down in infamy.
Yeah, exactly.
10 out of 10. Oh, okay, I get it. That's clever. It's clever.
10-10 day.
So yeah, we're trading at 106 of 107 right now. So the lower bound there on the flash crash. If you know the TA people will say, oh, this looks like it's going to roll over. More downside, more pain in the future. Let's talk about some of the bears. What are the bears? What is the bear case right now?
Well, so to set this up, though, I would say you could start with just the basics to describe some of the price action this week, at least on Bitcoin, which pretty much determines how the rest of the crypto market price action, what happens with the rest of the crypto price market price action in the market. So there was a whale.
Good job. You
whale.
got that sentence out. Good work.
Yeah, very early for me. There was another OG whale has been selling here, right? Like just massive slugs of Bitcoin. It started last week with 164 million, and this week on Wednesday with 164 million, and then yesterday, Thursday, with 290 million more. This whale has 10,000 Bitcoin and It's about $1 billion, I think. And they've sold, oh God, I guess approaching half of it. I don't know why this is happening, but this could indicate some of the price action. And of course, you had the Fed come out this week and deliver the 25 basis point rate cut that we all expected. So that should have done something, but obviously everything's priced in, Graham. So that did nothing. However, in his comments after the announcement of the rate cut, Powell did hint at, remark at that they might possibly skip the December rate cut, which is right now highly anticipated. It's predicted to happen, and Bitcoin did not like to hear this. Markets did not like to hear this, and they reacted to the downside immediately after this. So that's kind of maybe the short term explanation for some of this price action this week. OG whale selling and delivered rate cut, but maybe the future rate cut is off the table. Now, I'll go into the first reason to maybe be bearish. We had some interesting action with DATs this week and last week, but a lot this week. So these DATs are starting to buy back the stock, Graham. So they're selling the asset, they're selling the crypto, and buying back the stock. Of course, why not? So ETHZilla did this. They sold 40 million worth of ETH this week. A Bitcoin treasury company, Sequan, might have sold $110 million worth of Bitcoin. And Metaplanet announced that they have graciously authorized the repurchase of up to 150 million shares of its common stock. This looks like it might become a bit of a pattern here if we're having all this action in, I don't know, one week. Not great, I think.
Yeah. I would note that, for a while there, a couple of months ago, it was just day after day of digital asset treasury company announcement of, okay, we're doing this, we're buying that. And those have certainly fizzled out. And now you're getting these quiet announcements of sales, or not announcements, but on-chain sleuths, I guess,
Yeah.
pointing it out.
Yeah, it was also pointed out that exactly what you said, that all those smaller DATs probably. So these are larger ones. They're probably a little more incentivized to be more transparent. But I saw in a comment this week that there's probably more sales going on, but these companies have no they don't have to announce that they're selling, and the only time we're going to find out is when we see their quarterly documentation, right?
Yeah.
And that's when they have to disclose, right, that they actually did sell. And so probably the next quarterly announcements will we'll see that a lot of these companies have sold. So now, is this bearish? How bearish is this? It's hard to say. It's definitely now a headwind instead of a tailwind, right? I mean, at the very least, you could say that. Right? I think, is kind of inarguable that the DAT meta really was like the marginal buyer for much of the year, right? And so that was kind of supporting Bitcoin and Ethereum prices, and now much less so. So we'll see how this develops going forward. But that's one kind of bearish thing happening. Do you want to get into this market instability stuff, or should I jump into this?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so this is kind of maybe the more worrying stuff for me. The DAT stuff is a little more kind of idiosyncratic for crypto. That is to say, doesn't really matter as much, right? Like if the overall market, if macro is doing well, then who cares about some little old DATs selling peanuts, 40 million here, 110 there? That's nothing. However, it does. I have been starting to feel that there's a lot more market instability. So this week on Tuesday, the S&P 500. Did you see this? It's crazy. Was up on the day. It was up like 0.26 or something like that, 2.26%. I think it reached an all-time high. It was green for the day. However, 59% of stocks in the S&P 500 were negative on the day, right? So you have a majority of stocks down on the day, yet the overall index is up. This is the worst market breadth. Breadth meaning kind of the broad the broadness of the index. This is the worst market breadth for the S&P 500 in the last 30 years, and is definitely a sign of dislocation. It's kind of unhealthy, right? To have most stocks do poorly, and yet the overall index rises. Um, Again, sign of market instability. This isn't only in America either. So I saw some comments. There's this really great Japanese account that I follow, called, was it Deep? Is it Japan Deep Market Value or something like that? This happened in Japan too, right? This week as well. So it's a global phenomenon. Not good to have this kind of global phenomenon where you have most things are suffering, and yet overall it might look like things are doing well. So that's worrying. Then this week there were charts about the kind of the overall leverage that is building up in world markets. Um, so again, this is not crypto, right? Where we're kind of used to being levered to the hilt, and which is probably is one of the biggest culprits for the 1010 flash crash, right? We're talking about overall global markets, and this graph and the graph in the next link shows that leverage is increasing to very high levels across the globe, and this is showing leverage via levered ETFs, as in the amount of money going into levered ETFs. How good of a signal is this? It's, again, hard to say, right? Like leverage doesn't only exist in ETFs. Obviously, it's probably levered ETFs are, I would imagine, not a majority player in like the amount of leverage in the world, but it is a sign. It is a sign that leverage is building up, and of course, um, that's a sign that the market's getting hot, and it's a sign that you can have very, very, very large swings in either direction, right? This is just basically going to increase volatility, and that's like the best case. In the worst case, obviously, leverage gets wiped out, and you get flash crashes and kind of waterfalls and all that kind of stuff that like we saw in 1010, except on a like a bigger scale. So these are the to me kind of the most compelling reasons to be cautious right now. Um, I don't know. Any thoughts on this, Graham?
Yeah, just give me a few minutes. I'm just going to sell my entire portfolio. I'll be right back.
So okay, we have a comment. Shay asked, "Are we entering the bear market?" Okay, So we started with this whole thing being complicated, right? And not and kind of confusing. Um, if it was clearly a bear market, then that would not be confusing, right? So this is the bear case, but then you also have a very strong bull case, right? And we're about to go into the bull case. So Shay, the short answer is I don't know. The cop out is I don't know, but we gave you the bearish case. Let's talk about some reasons to be bullish. All right, first off, uh, the Bitcoin gold ratio. Um, this had been down only for a while as gold has run up this year, has had a kind of historic run up this year.
Yeah, basically since August, it's been down from a ratio of 37 all the way down to almost 24.
Yeah.
But has bounced back with the gold sell-off that got started about a week ago.
Yeah, and like I mentioned in my newsletter last week, um, this was via Michael Howell from Cross Border Capital who pointed this out. Um, Bitcoin and pointed out to me, Bitcoin and gold are kind of anti-correlated on shorter time frames, short to medium term time frames. They're highly correlated on longer time frames. So this basically means in the short term, short to medium term, when one is running, the other is kind of flat or slightly negative, right? So gold will run, Bitcoin will be flat or slightly negative. Gold will stop running, and then Bitcoin will run. And so um, on the long term, they're both rising, right, together. But in the short to medium term, they take turns thus far. And so the idea is it Bitcoin's time to run now that gold has looks to be in kind of a cooling off period. Um, and this chart kind of, I would say, is another indicator that, we probably are going to see Bitcoin go up here. So gold is going to take a break. All right, so that's one kind of bullish piece of news. All right, Joe Consorti, he posted something about Bitcoin saying that it looks like a coiled spring. All right, so little TA here, technical analysis, male astrology, but there's a little data with it too. Quote, Bitcoin's 90-day volatility has been this low in just 7.76% of its history, right? Um, this is to say that it's very rare for Bitcoin to be this, quiescent, and you're going to see some action here in Bitcoin soon. This doesn't say if it's going to be to the upside or to the downside, but my my bet would be to the upside in this case. And so you get this kind of, and if you look at the chart, you get this coiled spring, and you'll see like a move, dramatic move to the upside. Again, little little bullish. This week, Eric Balkanis, the Bloomberg ETF analyst, he had some amazing, amazing bullish posts. Now, this guy is awesome, by the way. He's just an awesome human. I've only met him once, but he was so cool and just kind of down to earth. But he's a TradFi guy, and not even a TradFi guy. More specifically, he's an ETF guy. And he told me that he was around when ETFs were a new thing, and the TradFi industry didn't take the ETF seriously. So he has this kind of understanding of how new products are kind of underestimated by TradFi, by the incumbents, and he feels strongly about this in relationship to crypto. So he had some posts this week where he was talking about the spot crypto ETFs, specifically Bitcoin. Right? He said, "quote Here's the fastest ETF to hit $100 billion. The chart is VOO. Its current best at 2011 days. Right? So it took VOO 2011 days to hit 100 billion. This is the best um, not this is the best TradFi ETF, according to Eric Balcones. He's talked about this quite a bit. He likes this ETF more than any other ETF. He thinks it's the leader. It has the most liquidity. Blah 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 blah. 2011 days. IBIT is at 435 days, and it just has 2 billion more to go to hit that 100 billion mark. I mean, this is insane. It's huge. So in a follow-up post, I just want to read this. He said, imagine any industry, cars, tech, movies, where something was launched and put up IBIT numbers. It would be dubbed generational or transformative. And while many are reacting appropriately, some feel nothing. It's interesting. And I thought this was a great post, right? Because it kind of reminded me, and I think it should remind people in crypto, definitely people in TradFi, how truly transformative this space is, how important Bitcoin and these digital assets are. You're seeing kind of historic moves within traditional finance uh, as it pertains to crypto, right? So it's good to kind of take a step back and realize that, yeah, this is as important and transformative as we all thought, right? The reason that we got into this, and the numbers don't lie. You can look at the traditional finance numbers, and it's as impressed. It's more impressive than anything um, that has come before. All right, so that's kind of a bullish thing, more of a long term bullish reason, but very very strongly bullish. And then finally, been talking for a while here, but finally, we have the kind of maybe the one of the biggest reasons to be bullish, which is the money printer go burr thesis. This is first articulated to me, or the first first became aware of it in August with Arthur Hayes. Right, I interviewed Arthur Hayes at WebEx, and he was really kind of um, out there pushing this thesis, and I think he's right, which is basically the U.S. is going to print a shit ton of money. Um, they're really going to get started next year. We're kind of just in the very beginnings of this now, but it's going to ramp up next year. And I talked about Japan last week. There's more news about Japan this week. Japan being kind of like a precursor or a foreshadow of what the U.S. is going to do, what the rest of the world is going to do. Basically, the yen had a bad week, and looks like it's going to have a bad rest of the year. Have a bad rest of I don't know how long, for a while. Um, RIP for anybody who gets paid in yen. Anyway, the Bank of Japan (BOJ) um, had made some announcements this week, and yeah, it's going to be good for like asset prices, like Nikkei and stuff like that. Maybe good for businesses to devalue the yen to make the Japanese manufacturing, Japanese exports more competitive. Bad for people who hold yen, bad for savers. But Arthur Hayes quoted the BOJ announcement this week, and I'm going to read you the quote. This is the quote from the BOJ via Hayes. Due to rising uncertainty in domestic political circumstances, as well as global economic weakness, as indicated by the Fed's continuing rate cuts, we feel it is best to maintain policy as is, with the intention to further propel inflation to our 2% target. So the BOJ wants more inflation, basically, right? Like,
The people
that's
aren't poor enough.
that's crazy. Like the so I live in Japan. Graham lives in Japan. Inflation is been like kind of the number one thing that normal Japanese people talk about. Everyone talks about the rising costs of food and energy,
Yeah.
right?
Rice, which I don't really eat much of, but I'm told it's quite expensive.
Yeah, I mean, so you anyway, the the BOJ seems to be saying, um, "Yep, we're targeting more inflation, so we're gonna keep going for it."
Yeah.
And then Weston Nakamura, he's also a great follow. He lives in Japan. He comments a lot on the Japanese economy and politics, um, but he does other things as well. He said, now it looks like the USD JPY trading pair looks to be breaking the 153.50 level, right? Which is where we're at right now. If it does, there's only 2 or 3 resistance levels left before hitting a new 3-decade level, with 160 becoming the floor. This would be huge. This would be very, very, very big. The JPY briefly hit 160, I think, last year, right? And that was like resistance. So it hit it and then it went down. But if 160 becomes the floor, good God, yeah, that's quite a devaluation. Again, would be great for uh, assets, right? Things
Yeah,
like
for
crypto.
Japan Inc. I guess it's good for Japan Inc. Not so great for the common man.
Yeah, but again, this is all like foreshadowing what is likely to happen in America next year, um, especially like leading up into the midterm elections, and that is, again, it's going to be bullish for asset holders. So good for digital assets. All right, so those are kind of the bearish and bullish things that I wanted to talk about today. Graham, what are you feeling? Bearish or bullish?
Yeah, it's at the bottom of the range, so I feel bearish. When it's back up at the top of the range, I'm going to feel bullish. Yeah, I'm just like the market psychology simpleton over here, David.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a week ago, I said if we get back down to the lower part of this range, I'm buying. But now that we're here,
Are you
ah,
are you buying? Are you,
um,
are you
yeah,
buying,
it's
bro?
hard. It's so hard. But
Uh,
your treatise here, your yeah summary of the markets it's got me tempted.
yeah, yeah, I hear you. Do
Um,
we have time to talk about one more story, or should we?
let's get Vlad on the pod here.
Okay,
He's waiting on standby. Um, let's talk about the Solana thing while he
okay.
jumps in.
All right, so I'll set the stage for this. This is more of like a fun kind of popcorn story. I don't think it's not a lot of meat on this story or importance, but it's just kind of fun. Anyway, so earlier this week, maybe yesterday, gosh, I can't remember. Western Union announced that they are going to launch a stablecoin on Solana, and the Solana people, being the just amazing cheerleaders that they are, they're just like the best cheerleaders. They all kind of rah this and uh, took up a lot of oxygen on my timeline. I don't know about yours, but it was everywhere. And then there was this great post talking about how I think it was from an Ethereum person, of course, saying like, this is not a big deal. Solana had to pay for it. They had to pay, I think they said $50 million. And so then, um, right, so Solana had to pay for this. And then all these ETH people and Cardano people started kind of dunking on this deal, saying, huh, how does it feel when your blockchain has to pay? There's Hodgkinson. This is Charles Hodgkinson's reaction
I
to
don't
the
get this. I don't get this. That's just him like laughing.
yeah, like laughing and like showing how like stupid it is. Like, hey, I and Mert quote tweeted Hodgkinson, and this just actually just, like massively dunked on him, which is hilarious. Basically saying like, there you have it, ETH people. You're now as good as XRP and Cardano people. How does it feel? So,
ETH derplets fell off so hard that
yeah.
they started bonding with Cardano and XRP people. What's a derplet?
You know, derp, right? Like derp. It's like
Okay.
it's like a
And so
sound that
a derplet is like a diminutive version of a derp,
yeah,
like a
yeah,
manlet, but a derplet. I
yeah,
get it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's good.
And so then anyway, but there is a little interesting part to this, which is so Mert people, everybody was kind of like the Solana people were saying like basically um yeah, of course this was paid, right? This is the real world. You know, we have BD and sales, and you know, we go after it because we want we want business. And the ETH people and Cardano people were saying things like, you know, imagine having to pay to get people to use your chain and things like that. Um, so I have there's another kind of like twist to this, but I was wondering if you have any strong initial feelings about Solana paying Western Union to use their chain.
Yeah, it seems a bit dirty, but I get the business case. Hey, Vlad.
Hello,
Hi,
Vlad.
it's good to see you.
Yeah, how you doing? We're just wrapping up our a little story here on the Solana drama with them paying to have Western Union issue. What is it? A stable coin?
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the chain.
I mean, the way I see it, that's not Solana drama, it's Ripple drama.
Say more.
I mean, the whole narrative of Ripple for all these years has been that they're going to replace Swift and they're going to be the currency for remittances. And to be honest, if you think back, when was this? 2017, 2018? I think Ripple did something similar with MoneyGram. They basically acquired some shares in MoneyGram and then they pushed some agencies from MoneyGram to accept Ripple for their payments. I mean, it's eternal September, guys. All the time. We get the same stuff. Maybe the names change a bit, but same tactics.
Yeah,
Eventually we'll get there, but
yeah.
it's just
There was
not
a
it.
there was a great I thought it was a good comment from Omid Malikon, who said Ethereum people and Solana people, you know, kind of just maybe take a step back. Obviously, this is not specific or special with Solana, as you just said, Vlad. This happens with all blockchains. What is it? Optimism paid Robinhood like 100 million in tokens, basically, to have them choose to use their stack. So uh, everyone does this. I think Omid's point was for it to be transparent, which I think would be nice, right? So you had this Western Union announcement, and Solana people kind of like going, "Oh, well, we're awesome! Oh my god!" But it also would have been nice for them to be like, "Yep, and we paid for it, right? We're awesome, and we paid for it." So it'd be a little better to be transparent. Anatoly actually got into the comments though of Omid's post and was saying like, "Why do we need to be transparent? That's not it's not good for business. It's not good for business interests. So I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah. All right. Vlad, the reason we wanted to get you on the pod is you've been you've been sort of kind of at the center of the uh, how to put this. I mean, you've been quite vocal
Zcash
recently
Renaissance.
about the Zcash Renaissance, yeah, and a lot of people in the Bitcoin community have been butthurt with, I guess.
No, they're called
Like,
sidelined.
sidelined, okay, with this whole narrative of Zcash doing well. Bitcoin famously is not so private, while Zcash is. And then you also had quite an interesting discussion with Anti Moonboy, where you had a bit of a debate about the merits of Zcash versus Monero, and among other topics. That was quite interesting to listen to, so I recommend people check that out. Vlad, of course, the host of the Bitcoin Takeover podcast, which is an excellent podcast, really gets into the weeds. Some of your shows are like 18 hours long or something.
Yeah,
No,
marathon.
not 18, maybe like 8.
What's your record?
By the way, you should also
What's your record?
disclose that you're paying me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yes,
You-
that's
you're,
right. There
You're
we go.
basically
Transparency.
boosting my
Transparency.
self-esteem right now, being like, "Oh, this guy is so great," but then I'm sponsored by Bitcoin.com news. So
Yeah. So when we
transparency.
asked you to come on the pod, you couldn't refuse.
Excellent.
no, I'm under duress right now.
Editors, let's cut this part, okay? We need to cut this out.
So
No.
yeah, let's. I don't know if you have a specific question.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I have.
David,
I have a bunch. I love privacy. It's kind of. I've said this many times, but it's what really kind of made me fall in love with crypto, and it's why it wasn't Bitcoin for me, right? It was at first. I remember very clearly getting into Bitcoin. I was like, oh, this is awesome, this is amazing, and then I did a deep dive into Bitcoin. I'm like, wait a second, it's not private at all. There's no privacy. This is ridiculous. And so was Monero for me. Anyway, I want to take a step back, and I want to kind of hear. When did you? So I know you've been a Zcash supporter for a while, but I want to hear, why have you been a supporter of Zcash for some time? You're not like new. You're not one of these like bandwagoners who've got on the bandwagon, like maybe Ansem or some of these other people. Why have you supported Zcash? And I think it's related to your support of Bitcoin, as far as I understand it. So could you just go over kind of why you've supported Zcash, and then we'll get into why you think now Zcash has kind of become a very big narrative, a darling of the space.
Okay, so let me start with the personal story first, because I guess people love these stories. For about 7 or 8 years, I used to hate Zcash. I was like, this is corporate. This sucks. It's never gonna catch on. I don't get why this even exists. Why would anyone invest in this? And what actually happened, and this puts me in a sort of privileged situation, right? Because I actually got to talk to Zuko last year. It was around the time when I got canceled by my tribe, which is Bitcoin maximalists, and I felt a bit lost. And for some reason, this guy also wanted to talk to me, because apparently he also feels that way. Like, he started Zcash because he wanted to improve the privacy of Bitcoin. He was faithful to the design of Bitcoin. He kept the 21 million coins cap. He kept that transparent side of the blockchain to basically prove that there's no inflation in the system. And then his system became mature, and 9 years later, Bitcoin does not even consider adding this. Like, if you look back, Zcash started as Zero Cash, which was a paper from 2013 by a bunch of academics. I guess the main character in this story is Matthew D. Green, who is a researcher and an academic. And 2013 was quite a bull market for Bitcoin. It went from double digits to triple digits. It hit $1,000. A lot of people came and paid more attention and took it more seriously. And the major flaw that Bitcoin has as a system is the lack of privacy and therefore censorship resistance and also fungibility. So at the network level, you can actually discriminate between transactions because it's not private. And this makes it less resistant to censorship. And we can see this today with the debate about filters and upper turn and stuff like this. And at the monetary level, you can distinguish between the origins of various coins and say that these are clean and these are not, which is suboptimal for something that you want to be a money system. So in 2013, we actually got two papers that sought to mitigate this. The first one was called Zero Coin, and it was sort of abandoned because it was not, maybe it was the first design, the first prototype. And then a few months later, we got Zero Cash, and that one basically stuck and became the prototype for Zcash. For the longest time, or no, not the longest time, for a few years, this was considered to be a proposal for a soft fork for Bitcoin. And if you go back to August of 2013, there's this Bitcoin Talk thread by Greg Maxwell who says, let's create coin joins. He came up with the term on the spot right then and said, until we get zero coin, which was the hot topic at the time, let's try to use CoinJoin. And to this day, Bitcoin never actually got better privacy than that. We just have the CoinJoin. And the conversation in 2013, you can also look at the cover of Bitcoin magazine at the time. I'm sorry I mentioned your competition, but it's an actual physical print that you can find out there in the wild. And there is this cover of this anonymous kind of person. And it says right there on the cover, zero coin is coming to Bitcoin. Privacy, Bitcoin becomes private, something like this. So it was a big deal to add zero knowledge proofs to Bitcoin to make it private. It seems like Bitcoiners forgot. At one point, and this is another funny story. Zuko said it on my podcast. At one point, Zcash was going to be a side chain that was going to get added to Bitcoin. And it was actually Roger Ver who said, if we do that, we're not going to get any information from the market, like if there's any actual demand for this. And it's better to actually launch an altcoin and then see where it goes. So if there's anyone to blame for this, blame Roger. Anyway,
Woohoo!
where was I? Basically, it's a long story of trying to improve the privacy of Bitcoin with zero knowledge proofs. Satoshi himself mentioned it in 2010 in a Bitcoin Talk thread, but he never got to do it because there were no libraries. He did not have much, I guess, manpower or research time to pursue this. But the Zcash team actually pulled it off and they came up with this proposal and they said, let's make Bitcoin private. The irony of the whole situation is that Zcash became so much better over the years. I think a couple of days ago it turned 9 years old and it's so much better. It removed the trusted setup. I don't think they have that dev tax anymore from the mined blocks. They have a much more decentralized structure with free independent dev companies that work on the same project. They actually have plans to make it scale. They have it working on mobile. They have unified addresses. It's really amazing in the way that it works. And it's so different from where they started. But the conversation about adding this to Bitcoin is at an all time low. And at the same time, it was actually Ethereum that benefited most from it because Tornado Cash and Railgun and all of these ZK privacy protocols were actually based on the ZK Snarks libraries that were built by Zcash. And this is a bit disappointing in a way to see that, okay, the tech is here, it was delivered, but the culture changed or diverged so much from the original plan that Bitcoin doesn't want this anymore. But this is where I come in, I guess, because I bought some Zcash last year when it was like 30 something dollars. And now I see it going to 300. So I sort of 10x'd on a privacy coin, which is
10x,
amazing,
10x,
by the way.
10x.
People were saying that it's dead. But I do believe that if the price goes up and more people actually look at the reason behind why it went up, it might actually be considered as a Bitcoin upgrade once again. And this leaves us, and I know what you're going to ask me, where is Zcash going to go if Bitcoin basically becomes Zcash? And that's an
Well, I was
interesting.
yeah, I was going to ask, like, what would actually have to happen for Zcash like tech to be integrated into Bitcoin?
Pigs
Is that
flying,
any is
hell
that
freezing over.
anywhere within the realm of possibility? Like,
We have this chimera in Bitcoin that we call consensus. We don't know what it means. We just refer to it. And whenever someone proposes something like CTV or CAT or whatever, and when we want to reject it, we say there's no consensus. I have no idea what consensus means. I've been trying to understand it for such a long time. There is no consensus. There was no consensus to scale in 2017. There was no consensus to add CTV in 2022 or more recently. But we usually appeal to this ghost or whatever of the consensus. Like, we can't find it. We don't know where it is. We just have to agree in a very large majority. I guess one way to prove it is the way in which we activated Taproot, which was speedy trial, where we got the miners to signal support by adding something to the block headers that they're mining to basically signal support. And that's a good way to show that more than 50% of the network agrees with this. But I guess the cult of Sailor and the way in which Bitcoin has evolved over the last 5 years is sort of the enemy of adding any kind of privacy.
Yeah.
so Michael Saylor would have to come out and be like, "We need this." That would
Oh,
be.
he's already said recently. He weighed in on the kind of the core knots argument. Kind of obliquely weighed in on it, saying Bitcoin doesn't need to change. Ossification is good, right? So
It
that's
was also him who allegedly, this was a leak, so I don't think it was ever confirmed, but he did double down on the idea. He allegedly convinced an ETF company to not donate a percentage of their profits to core developers. And then he doubled down on the idea that if you leave developers with a lot of funding and a lot of ideas, they're going to end up messing up something as beautiful as Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, I don't know about you, Vlad, because you kind of didn't exactly answer the question, but to me, I took that as there's no way in hell that like Zcash like technology uh, can be transferred to Bitcoin.
Well,
I just
there
don't
are
see it as a
hacky ways,
possibility.
that's what we're good at. Because since we can't actually hard fork anything into Bitcoin, we just patch things and we just add hacky ways to do it. There are three ways right now in which Zcash is sort of coming to Bitcoin. One of them is Paul Stort's proposal for drive chains, and he does have a sidechain that's called Zside, and it's a one-to-one fork of Zcash without the transparent side. So actually, it's really good. But I'm not sure if that's gonna happen. I do hope it will, but it's gonna take a while. There is a proposal that's called ZK Coins by Robin Linus, who is the creator of BitVM, and he was inspired directly by Zcash to do this. And there's also something similar. There's a paper that was published last year that's called Shielded CSV. CSV stands for Client Side Validation, and it's authored by Robin Linus, Liam Egan, and Nick Jonas from Blockstream. No, Jonas Nick, not Nick Jonas. That's of the Jonas Brothers. Jonas Nick. And they basically propose to have a separate protocol where all transaction sizes are equal. I think it's like 50 bytes each. And they sort of use the same ZK Snarks library. And that one can come to Bitcoin without any kind of fork. But then again, there's another problem outside of consensus, which is agreeing that something is useful. Because we're going to get all of these ZK rollups on Bitcoin. I think next month we're going to get Citrea, which is sort of like Ethereum on Bitcoin on the ZK rollup. And in a few months, we're also going to get Alpen Labs launching their product. But the question is, who's actually going to use it? Because when you have a culture that says, well, this is the unholy way of using Bitcoin, and you should not touch this, it's shitcoins, it's degenerate, it's whatever, then who's going to actually use it? And unless we build a healthy culture, which goes back to the cypherpunk roots, and we embrace the new technologies and say that okay, this is going to change. Maybe that the way in which we use Bitcoin today is not the final way, is not the ultimate way. Maybe that there's a better way to do it. Maybe that we're going to keep ownership of these coins, but actually use them in different ways with other applications and protocols. But we
Are
have to work on that.
are you optimistic? I am known as a wet blanket, so obviously I'm pessimistic about.
I have to be. I don't have another chance. I have to be optimistic. Even if I fail,
Well, okay,
I
sorry.
think it's a fight worth
Are you
fighting.
optimistic about Bitcoin? I should say changing substantially, or in I don't know. I just feel like that's going to be really
I'm
really hard.
optimistic that it's such a limited and constrained system that people will find hacky ways to add stuff to it, and then other people will not be happy and say this was not supposed to work this way. But I do see room for innovation and people doing stuff. Or if it all goes wrong, we'll just, what did Roger say? That we'll bridge our Bitcoin to the confidential layer and tokenize Bitcoin on Zano, and that's going to be the way to use Bitcoin. But this goes back to an article from 2021 by Gavin Andreessen, who had been maintainer of the project from 2010, I think, until 2016 ish. And he said that in the future, maybe that will just switch off the Bitcoin network and move on using the coins on another network and forget altogether that this was supposed to be proof of work and decentralized and stuff, and have some other networks that transfer the asset but do not use the technology anymore. And it's sort of what we see with ETFs, it's what we see with tokens. WBTC on Ethereum is the biggest layer 2 right now for Bitcoin. It has like 100,000 BTC locked in it, which is like 25 times more than the Lightning Network. And I've never heard anyone say WBTC is so great, I love it, but I do hear at every conference someone saying that Lightning is great and it works.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to ask you. I have a couple more questions about Zcash. I really thought that your recent post was kind of one of the most compelling things for to support the price appreciation of Zcash and maybe further price appreciation, because I've been pretty skeptical and I've been openly skeptical about the rise of it thus far. Um, it's this post that starts with the true reason why Zcash is pumping so hard. Spoiler alert, it's not the influencers, it's not the institutions, and it's definitely not Israel. I don't know about that last part, but no, no, seriously, it's basically about DeFi, right? Um, and it's about and Mert, the kind of the most vocal bald-headed Solana cheerleader, has also talked a lot about this in this vein as well, which is Zcash is a great way to maintain privacy, not just for your Zcash transactions, but um, for for your transactions and activity on chain. Is that basic? Is that kind of the basic TLDR of this, or am I missing something?
Well, so you come from the Monero side of the debate. And in Monero, they seem to be maximalists of the dark net markets. And they say, well, if this currency is accepted to buy a lot of stuff online, then it means it's useful. But I think Zcash basically figured out that DeFi is a much bigger and liquid market where people actually need privacy to break the link between their trades. Because honestly, why would you have your whole history of trades on a public ledger that anyone can access forever? So a good way for them has been with this integration of near intents, which I think is a fork of what's it called? Torchain, I think. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong, but this one actually enabled people to swap directly to Zcash and then shield their funds and wait in the shielded pool for a while before they withdraw and do another trade. And I think this week or next week there's gonna be a hyper liquid integration which once again is going to support this DeFi use case with people who are going from one asset to the other, and they want to break the link between what they swapped into. And once they get to Zcash, they shield it. The shielded pool is basically a very good way to get privacy, and you don't have there are some mistakes that you can make. For example, if you're a whale and you go inside with 100 Zcash and you take out 100 Zcash pretty fast, then it might be obvious that it's the same person that went into the shielded pool and left. But if you do it in a smart way and you just take out small amounts at different times, and yeah, so far it seems like most people who go into the shielded pool don't actually get out. If you look at the chart that shows how many coins are shielded on Zcash, they started out this year with about 1 million, and now they're above 4 million, which is a 4x increase. And the total supply right now is like 16, 17 million that have been mined.
So,
Vlad, why would you? Sorry, just a dumb question here. Why would you get out of the shielded pool? Why would someone want to get out of the shielded pool?
Well, I guess if you're into DeFi, at one point you're gonna want to swap into another asset. Maybe they want to get USDT or whatever. So that's one of the reasons why. Another one could be that they want to make a payment. There's this very nice wallet that they built for Zcash. It's called Zashi, and you can scan from it any kind of other address, and it's gonna do an automatic swap. So you can pay from your shielded Zcash into Bitcoin. You can actually do that, and it's very nice. It does use a third-party service in the background, but you don't have to know it. And this is the
So,
beautiful part, because for the longest time, Zcash had been hard to use and clunky, and it was not obvious what it's actually useful for. And now it finally has a use case, and the technology is more mature. I think that's why it's pumping. And people just look at the charts and they're like, yeah, it happens every cycle. It goes up to this point, and then you see a massive dump. And so far, they were terribly wrong because they did not see what actually got built. They only looked at charts.
yeah. So, I mean, just another example, Graham, that we talk about all the time, which is how do I fund, for example, a new wallet that I want to have
yeah,
be
want
completely
to break the chain of
yeah.
like transactions. Like okay, so you put some Zcash into the pool, you withdraw it out as Bitcoin, and now that Bitcoin wallet is sort of untainted.
Yeah,
It's not connected to any of your other wallets.
It's not connected to your other wallets to some degree. Yeah, yeah, and you kind of you prevent the ability for people to kind of track how much you have in your original wallets and stuff like that. So I get that use case, but I wonder like what's the difference between something like so this kind of use case versus like using silent swap or some of these other security obfuscating services, railgun, things like that, to break the chain. If the main use case is DeFi, it seems like that there are already alternatives to this than Zcash.
Well, Railgun, if I'm not mistaken, is on Ethereum. And
Yeah,
so far,
correct.
these use cases have been used by the Solana guys. I'm not sure if Ethereum guys are very high into this particular use case. But yeah, you're right that Railgun has a network effect on Ethereum and is actually popular. I think right now it's mainly the Solana guys who are using Zcash because they found it and they find it useful. And maybe that other use cases will develop. Maybe this is just the one that starts maybe a greater awakening of people realizing that, okay, this finally works the way that it's supposed to do, and it's useful in ways that people will figure out in the future.
and so you like Zcash more than Monero, basically, is kind of
Oh yeah.
because of the pragmatic use cases or just the technology or both?
No, it's not about the use cases. It's just that first reason is that Zcash is 100% compatible with Bitcoin. And if we ever get consensus, we can just add a soft fork to Bitcoin. And we're going to basically have Zcash, but with the network effects and market cap of Bitcoin, which would be amazing. Secondly, the argument is that the technology of ZK snarks is much more advanced. Right now, Monero, so the way in which it works is that it uses obfuscation or deniability. When you send a transaction, you have 16 decoys,
Yeah,
and
ring
you're basically
signatures.
one of the 16 with ring signatures. With Zcash, you have an anonymity set, which is one of millions, and it expands with every transaction. So even if there are only 2 people using the network at one time, you're still one of the multiple millions, and nobody's gonna know exactly where this comes from. So it uses this accumulator model, which I think is much more interesting. Monero is trying to do full chain membership proofs right now, which basically is their way of playing catch up with Zcash to have an anonymity set which is close. That one will come with some trade-offs, but I'm not gonna knock on it just because it makes it less scalable. But by the time Monero is gonna get that, Zcash has shielded assets on the roadmap, which basically will allow people to have stable coins or something else, which can be transacted with the same privacy of ZK snarks. And is also going to have something which is super exciting, and it's called Project Tachyon, Tachyon. And it's by Sean Bow, who was on my show this month, and I've interviewed him. Basically, that one is going to use a different kind of synchronization to allow these shielded transactions to scale to billions of users without any privacy trade-offs. And I think this is sort of the holy grail, because for a long time, I guess since we got confidential transactions in 2013, which is a way to make transactions larger to generate some obfuscation to hide the amounts, there was this very powerful narrative that privacy does not scale. And if you're going to have a privacy friendly system, then you're going to have to deal with larger transactions and the bloated blockchain and all of these trade offs that affect usability. And once that one comes out, and it seems like the ETA is about 1 year from now, it's gonna destroy this narrative, and it's gonna basically show us that there's no more trilemma, and the only limit is the sky. Because obviously, we're not gonna solve this with we did not solve 56K modems, like the limitations of that kind of internet speed, by adding more modems. We actually scaled with better technology, and in our case, the technology is the cryptography.
Vlad, we sort of jumped into this conversation just under the assumption that privacy is good, but maybe would you mind just explaining to us why privacy in digital assets is important?
Well, for a network like Bitcoin or Zcash, it's what it takes to get censorship resistance, which is a fundamental element in maintaining decentralization also, and making sure that the network is going to stay neutral. So if you can discriminate between 2 transactions as a miner, and you can say, well, I don't like where this one is coming from, so it's going to wait in the mempool longer, and maybe someone else will pick it up later, or maybe not, who knows. That's not ideal for the kind of system that we want something like Bitcoin to be. The other issue is monetary fungibility, which means that every unit should be equal to any other. And in the current design of Bitcoin, we don't really have that. And you can actually have Bitcoin that comes freshly from, I think the most valuable one is the one that was freshly mined. That one has no record other than the mining pool it came from. I guess the second most valuable is the one that comes from a trusted exchange, but without an obvious taint. Like you don't know exactly which user has withdrawn it. And then you also have Bitcoins that have been moved a few times. You have Bitcoins that came from the Silk Road, which I think are sort of bottom of the barrel. You have coins that came from coin joins, which are to some entities suspicious. And it's not an ideal world to have basically different values or different prices assigned to different kinds of coins. And maybe that there is a system for fungibility and it's human politics, because I do remember Tim Draper was one of the people who bought Silk Road Bitcoin and sort of made it fungible because it was him who bought that, and he's obviously not a darknet user. He did not buy drugs online, but at the same time, there should be no such social element. Like, the network should be truly neutral. And we're not going to get there. Actually, there are two ways to get there. We either stop looking at the origins, which is impossible because blockchain analysis is more advanced today than it's ever been. And with the rise of AI, it's only going to get more advanced. I mean, anyone with a ChatGPT or Grok account can just paste an address and ask ChatGPT to trace it, and you're going to get pretty far with this. The other solution is to add privacy to these systems. And of course, you can come up with the legal argument and say, well, but this will allow criminals to do this and that. But you have to remember that, first of all, criminality is the exception, it's not the general rule. And secondly, criminals exist in meat space. Like, they also go out and do stuff, they communicate with their phones. I mean, there are other ways to catch, even if you cannot see what they transacted and how much. And once you get to their computers and type their passwords or pins or whatever, you're going to see more. So what's important is to enable people to maximize their freedom and human rights. And law enforcement can find other ways which have worked for decades or centuries to track criminals.
Cool. Graham, do you mind if we ask a little bit about the Bitcoin Core knots stuff? I'd love to get.
I'm
Vlad's
okay with
opinion
that if
while
you
he's
are,
here.
Vlad.
I'm sort of okay with it because I keep following it, but I guess this is why I'm so heavily into Zcash these days, because I need something to give me hope, to give me some sense of sanity, because it went way too far. Like, it's overblown. There's no
Yeah.
reason for this to go so far, other than maybe that there's some malevolent intention on behalf of the ocean people at this point. So the story is that they spent months saying that an increase in the aperture size of Bitcoin will enable pedophiles to add their explicit material. I don't want to name it anything.
CSAM.
CSAM, yeah.
Yeah.
And when you come up with this, you can't call yourself an honest or well-meaning actor. Like, this is sort of the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to trying to FUD Bitcoin. Like, that, I'm pretty sure that stuff already exists, but it's not in JPEG format. It's not in any format that you can actually open by double clicking the files on your node. It's encoded. You have to know the right way to decode it. If I recall correctly, back in 2011, there was someone who was actually inscribing classified WikiLeaks documents on Bitcoin. So there's nothing new about this. Actually, it was the BitMEX research guy, Jonathan, and he published an article where he brought up how Satoshi and Hal Finney and a bunch of very early Bitcoiners had the exact same conversation on Bitcoin Talk. So there's nothing new about this. What's new about this is that you have a high council of priests who decided that they want to decide for others what is good and what is bad for the network to filter. And they have their own BIP right now, which is called 444. And with that one, they basically want to coerce all miners from the US at least to enable their filtering system under what they call legal and moral considerations. I think this is just a psyop or something, just an attack. Obviously, it's not going to happen. But the goal, first of all, is to demoralize the average Bitcoiner and make us feel like the mission is over. Maybe let's sell our coins and go. And secondly, we got sidetracked from any constructive conversation about how to improve Bitcoin. Like, we were this close to activating CTV or something meaningful that was going to allow better layer twos. And then, boom, we ended up with this.
Sorry, Vlad, just to interrupt. Could you go back? Why would why would that be someone's goal to demoralize the Bitcoin community? What's the end game there?
Well, I guess the easiest explanation is that people who got in very early and were feeling like they're gonna replace fiat or bank the unbanked or fulfill any of these noble goals are gonna feel like they're not part of the crowd anymore. They're gonna sell their coins. And I guess there's demand for these coins to be bought up by institutions. And once that happens, I guess it's also sort of the end of the cypherpunk spirit for Bitcoin. Like, if we actually comply with this sort of request and this sort of blackmail, it kind of is the end of Bitcoin as we know it. Maybe it will still be the digital gold store of value, collateral asset, whatever, but it's not the same currency that we're hoping is gonna enable people around the world to transact freely without banks, to join this digital economy worldwide and be able to break away from tyranny and oppressive governments. Like, maybe that will not be the case, at least not with Bitcoin. But I do like that Bitcoiners are putting up a fight. I just feel like the level of debate is getting lower every year. And it seems like the voices of the people who don't understand how Bitcoin works. And once again, I do have a conspiracy theory about this if you're willing to hear it.
Please.
Basically, the same guys who are very useful during the block size wars have only become louder and their voices have been amplified because they were useful, but they never actually learned how Bitcoin works. So they spent about 7-8 years just smelling their own farts and saying that Bitcoin is great. And now they woke up realizing that they're influencers and they have podcasts and they have something that they produce and people listen. And they still don't know how Bitcoin works. But to them, when someone says, let's keep Bitcoin only for monetary use cases, for transactions, they're going to identify with that and they will say, yeah, that makes sense. But they don't know how much data you can actually put using multi-sig transactions or just normal up returns or whatever. Like, there's such a long history of putting data on Bitcoin. Transactions themselves are data. And if you're going to start filtering, you're going to end up just limiting so many useful use cases. Like, I remember when Samurai Wallet could not work because of Luke Dash Jr.'s Bitcoin knots, because it was filtering up return transactions that Samurai was using. And this is just the beginning of it. Like, if these guys win, which they won't, I don't think that's their goal. They're just virtue signaling. But if they do win, that's gonna be, I think, the end of Bitcoin, and a lot of OGs will have a very good reason to sell, to get out, maybe find something else to do, maybe find Zcash or whatever. But my point is that it does feel like we're being demoralized and we're being divided. I see people who have been friends for many years breaking their friendships now just because they find themselves on different sides, which is stupid once again. And I don't even know how this is gonna end. Like, I don't see any happy ending for it, except maybe one of the sides is gonna hard fork and create their own altcoin. Most likely the not side because they have their own mining pool, they have their own node implementation, they have their own cult and ideology. So maybe they're gonna get the motivation to do this. And they're gonna lose, they're gonna fail miserably. And I don't know what's next. Maybe that there's gonna be like a cultural renaissance, and I would be happy to be part of that. Or maybe we're just gonna be very conservative and say, yeah, this is it. We try to improve Bitcoin. Let's just maintain it so that it works on Windows 12 and the next version of Mac OS, but that's the full extent of it. No more improvements. And that's when I sort of lose interest because I did not get into Bitcoin for this. I don't care too much about the store of value aspect of it, even though it sort of worked nicely so far.
Yeah, that there's some interesting bits there that I hadn't considered, especially the timing of it versus getting something like an opcode in is that I hadn't considered that aspect, but it is very kind of, well, it's opportune at the very least. If it's a coincidence, it's very very good.
What's even funnier, and there was a meme about this, basically with So there was a picture from last year's summer, with Iran bombing Israel and Israel using their anti-missile system. And the meme was saying that on the left side you have Jack Dorsey's money, and on the right side you also have Jack Dorsey's money, because Ocean is 20% or something owned by Jack Dorsey, and Jack Dorsey is also funding Bitcoin Core developers, so he's on both sides.
Yeah, what's up with that then? That doesn't
I
make
don't
any
know.
sense to me.
I don't think he would ever answer that.
Yeah, weird. And also, yeah, I've noticed to your point that a lot of the people that I follow have also were participating in the discussion, the debate, the division, but then have since kind of taken a step back because they're just like, I guess, feeling similar to you, which is just like, this is just it's a waste of time, and the level of debate and the level of like rhetoric and tactics has gotten so kind of childish in some ways that they're just kind of like, all right, I'm done engaging. um that also could be maybe on purpose as well. So yeah, very, very interesting and sad, I guess.
But then again, the ideology basically rejects. So I think there's also like a deeper issue here with the core developers, because the culture of Bitcoin has evolved to the point where they would expect everyone to eat meat and exercise regularly and believe in God, as in be good Christians. And the core developers were never really like that. Like, you look at them, you look at Luke Dash Jr., who's like the leader of this cult, and he's weak and overweight, and I don't know, he looks much older than he actually is. But then again, they
Yeah,
point
Vlad, and I
out
think
to Gloria Zhao, who is very young, and they were complaining, yeah, she's too young to be a maintainer of Bitcoin Core. But nobody ever said that about Greg Maxwell, or about Peter Todd, or about Tamos, or about all of these young guys who worked on Bitcoin very early on. Like, nobody ever said that to them, like, hey, you're too young. Matt Corallo was like 17 when he joined, and nobody told him that he's too young. And he actually added an inflation bug, and nobody said to him, well, you're too young to be working on this. So I do feel like she gets a lot of unfair criticism. And then there's Ava Chow, who used to be Andrew Chow, and the fact that she's trans sort of triggers these people and makes them think that Bitcoin Core does not represent them. So they're gonna basically go behind this guy who is a hardcore Catholic, but at the same time does not agree with Vatican. I don't know how that works. Like, is he a Protestant because he does not agree? I don't know. Anyway, he's vaguely Christian, but very hardcore about it. And they go behind him and they say he's gonna save them. I don't know. It's such a weird kind of story, and it looks very much like a psyop to me. But at the same time, what did Elon Musk say? That the most likely outcome is the most hilarious one, or something? Except that this is sad. Like, you look at what Bitcoin could have been, and you look at the Zcash sort of debates that they're having about how to improve the network and how to make the privacy more usable, and then you look at Bitcoin and they're like, oh, this is spam. I don't know. I guess
Yeah.
this is
yeah.
what mainstream
Meanwhile,
adoption looks like. We
yeah,
wanted
I was just gonna
mainstream
say,
adoption.
yeah.
Now we have it.
Meanwhile, in the mainstream, like you don't really hear anything about this whole debate at all. It's just digital asset treasury buyings and whatever Michael Saylor's
Stable coins.
quarterly results are, or whatever. Like, it's only like I don't know, the nerds within the Bitcoin, the hardcore people who like are paying any attention to this at all, it seems.
Well, I would say it's not even like some of the stuff that Vlad just said there at the end. I hadn't even heard some of this stuff. So this is like, and I think I try to keep tabs on as much of this as possible, but
Also,
it
Vladimir van
seems
der
so.
Laan, who had been maintainer of Bitcoin Core, he's also trans now.
Yeah.
Changed his name on GitHub.
So like this kind of stuff I don't care about, or I don't know any of this
No,
stuff.
I don't care about it either, but
No.
this
What I'm
might be a
saying,
reason why they're actually feeling like core does not represent them.
yeah, I know, I get that. What I'm saying is, and I'm sure if I had like was really in the weeds of this argument, I'd know all these details. But somehow this kind of I wasn't even aware that this probably is an issue to some of these people. It's just funny that it's like you said, it sounds like the Real Housewives of Bitcoin or something like that. This is what that kind of stuff sounds like. Like, wait, oh, is he, you know, religious and all this? It's a sad thing. Instead of talking about like the actual details, technology, maybe game theory of adding or subtracting things from Bitcoin. Instead, from what I've seen of the core knots stuff, it is this kind of like, I don't know, entertainment level entertainment level discourse.
Yeah, and
Right, and it's the worst kind of entertainment.
it almost doesn't seem to have any impact on this multi-trillion-dollar asset. Like it, but of course it does. It's just like the conversation in the mainstream about this doesn't pay any attention at all to this internal debate.
No, but what started out as what we called October ended up being very pessimistic for Bitcoin. And I do feel like the civil war that's happening right now plays a role in it, because we could have just given the investors hope that the project is heading into a good direction. Instead, we have conversations of another schism. And maybe it's going to work out just like the last time when in 2017 the price went up when there were expectations of SegWit 2x happening, and then it did not happen and the price went up. Maybe it will be the same this year or early next year. I don't know. I'm not a charts person. I don't deal too much with price predictions. I just hope there's gonna be like a happy ending, but I don't know how. Like at this point, it's very hard to see how we're gonna get out of this. The most obvious solution is for the not side to fork off and prove to us how they can filter. But I see a bunch of inscriber enjoyers already planning to inscribe stuff on the Bitcoin nuts fork, saying, "Oh, we're gonna find a workaround. We're gonna put our." Have you seen the dick butts? They're actually some very funny NFTs.
That kind of trolling is so it's funny, but it's also just really stupid.
Yeah,
I'm
I think
gonna-
that's a bit central
that's
to
so
this
funny.
thing is people are saying like, yeah, you try though you may to filter. It's just, you can't do it anyway. So
Yeah, I mean that is one of the real arguments, which is just it's a cat and mouse game, and there's always going to be a workaround. Wow.
Yeah, we should not be dogmatic about technology. I think that's the main takeaway. Like Bitcoin, whether or not we look at it as this holy invention that's gonna save humanity or whatever, it's still technology, and technology needs to improve over time and needs to be maintained and needs smart people to work on it. I miss the times when I was looking at Bitcoiners feeling like I'm learning something and I'm dumb and they're the ones that know stuff and I still need to learn more. And I'm not saying that all of them are dumb. I'm just saying that the level of discourse, like I'm trying to imagine myself joining today when I was 20 something years old and I discovered Bitcoin and just landing into this whole scene and trying to make sense of it,
You would
and
be
yeah,
trying to
out.
pick sides. I mean,
You'd be
I don't
on
know.
yeah.
you'd be on
Is anyone?
Zcash or Ethereum or
The
Solana.
block
There's no
size
way.
wars were
There's no
so
way.
eloquent and so smart in comparison. Like actually people had solutions and they were debating. And of course they became emotional after a while and they became impatient, but they actually made sense. Right now they don't make sense. And that's what hurts the most, because it's rhetorics and emotions over actual technical conversations. And we sort of, I don't know, maybe it's also the fault of the early adopters, the Bitcoin Core developers that were with the project early on, because a lot of them dropped out. And now we have this new wave of developers who are maybe not very good at communicating. They don't have the trust of the community. And maybe that, I think the other purpose of knots is to replace core. And maybe that's going to happen. I think that was an agenda during the block size wars to fire core. That was the rhetoric behind it. Maybe it will work. Maybe we're going to get a new crop of Bitcoin maintainers and we're going to get a different client, even though it's going to be difficult. Maybe that's what the end game is. You demoralize some, you make them leave, and then you replace with a new crop of developers. Maybe that's what Jack Dorsey wants. I don't know. But we gotta improve somehow. We gotta give these suits on Wall Street and the ETF guys some hope. And we fail miserably at it right now. We're not delivering anything exciting.
Yeah, but I mean, I think from my understanding, the suits on Wall Street, they would be fine with ossification, with like complete ossification. I think that's probably what they would want is no change. Have a pet digital rock. Because
Well, that's clearly what Michael Saylor repeatedly says. That's exactly what he
Yeah.
wants.
Yeah. And that's what I think is going to happen, is that it'll just become that pet rock, at least for a while, until you have to deal with like the security budget thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
or maybe
Now we're
something
talking.
like or maybe something like Zcash really mooning will start some conversations and make people be like, oh, because most people really ultimately just care about the price. And if they see some other asset doing better price wise, maybe that'll like be the catalyst for, okay, actually maybe this thing does need to have better tech. Maybe it does actually need to be used in the real world.
Yeah, and
Maybe
we also
that
have
will
to
make the
remember
price
that
pump more.
the investors on Wall Street or whatever, they do need to dump their bags on someone, right? So they need some sort of good story for it. And I do believe that at some point the Bitcoin story is not going to be as exciting even for retail. And there needs to be something like a hope that, of course, they're selling this dream of scarcity and the freedom and whatever. You're never going to touch it in reality. You're just going to get a piece of paper. But the person who buys it does need to have some sort of good story. And Bitcoin, I think, needs to deliver a good story in order to also make them happy.
Yeah.
Because obviously they do need the Bitcoin network to be secure and they do need it to function so that they can sell something that they can justify has value. Otherwise they'll be like, yeah, so it's this meme. Ultimately, maybe Bitcoin will become a meme and it will just be this idea that's spread around. But I don't think that's gonna work so well. But who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, Dogecoin, right? It happens.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was always just memes all the way down. I think maybe that's a good place to end it here, guys. I know it's late for you, Vlad. A lot of great insights. Thank you for taking us into the weeds.
Yeah, that
much
was
deeper
awesome,
than
man.
we
Thank you.
usually get. So very interesting. And any last thoughts here before we wrap it up, guys?
Man, should I buy Zcash at these prices? I don't know. Everybody on my timeline is shilling it. It's hard when every KOL thread guy level influencer is on the Zcash bandwagon. I haven't bought any yet. Graham, have you?
No, I'm scared to dig into it for fear of FOMO.
You guys are sidelined.
I'm super sidelined, dude. Mega sidelined. And if it was just you, Vlad, talking about it, and maybe Mert, I'd be like, all right, might as well. But then, I'm getting, I'm getting like Andrew Tate level people being like, Zcash, this is the future. I'm like,
If
But
Andrew
yeah.
Tate starts talking about it, I might actually sell. But
I'm expecting to see one of these, like we've been seeing more and more Bitcoin whales sort of exiting. And as soon as I see when are we going to see a Bitcoin whale exit to Zcash? That'll be interesting.
It's actually funny because, and I'm gonna end with this story. Basically, Zuko was the first person to write the first blog post about Bitcoin in 2009 in January. Satoshi put that on the webpage on bitcoin.org. And then, like a couple of months later, Zuko sent this internal email to the open source project on which he was working at the time, which was Tahoe LAFS, Least Authority File System. That's what it stands for. And one of the people who actually joined Bitcoin at the time was Slush. And he's this Czech guy. His real name is Marek. And what he revolutionized in a few months was to create the first mining pool. And Satoshi witnessed that. And it's really beautiful. He's from the Czech Republic. The fact that we have such a rich Bitcoin scene in the Czech Republic is mostly owed to Marek, who created this mining pool and then created Trezor and then created a bunch of other businesses which are thriving right now. And where I'm going with this is that Slushpool also became the first mining pool to mine Zcash. And there are a lot of these OGs who basically, if you look at the Zcash price chart, you're going to see that it started trading at $3,000 or something in its first day. It was because of the hype that was coming from these Bitcoin OGs who were like, oh, this is the next Bitcoin. This is going to be it. The problem is that the technology was not there yet. So it was not, maybe it was advertised too much and it was only made for cypherpunks to be used. But I do hope that some of these guys still have their Zcash bags and they have good intentions at hand. And maybe we're gonna live in a future where we actually have privacy as something that's part of the norm and not something that's frowned upon. There's also the parallel narrative of chat control and all of these initiatives coming to censor speech and encryption around the world. The fact that nowadays, if you live in Texas or the UK, you have to put your picture ID to watch porn online. I mean, it's pretty rough out there. So maybe that privacy is gonna have, because of these events, its moment in the spotlight. Or maybe it's just speculation. But if you guys were to buy Zcash, I would just buy one and try to not get sidelined. Maybe it will happen, maybe it will not happen. But you're still at a point where you can afford to buy one. And maybe that you're gonna regret this and you're gonna ask me to, I don't know, you're gonna invoice me being like, hey, I took a $300 loss, pay me back. Or maybe that you're gonna thank me, I don't know. But some of my
Vlad, it wouldn't be the
actually
first time
thanked
it wouldn't be the first time I bought the top. So
Yeah.
and
Also,
it's, buying the top has served me well in the past, actually, because
it's educational.
That's what
That's
happens.
what I like to think.
Yeah, exactly.
Graham, are you
I
ready
also
to
bought
be?
Bitcoin at the top, and then I had to learn why I bought Bitcoin at the top, and that's how I ended up here.
Exactly.
Graham, are you ready to be a community member again?
I'm exactly. I'm a long-term investor.
No, but
All
I
right.
mean, yeah, it
Go ahead, David.
It does seem very, very cool. I loved listening to clips and parts of your podcast and your posts, and it really did convince me of the value of Zcash, especially as it pertains to Bitcoin itself. And there's also a kind of a use case or a reason to buy or support Zcash, which you've said in posts before, I think, which is it's almost a way of funding this kind of like research in a way. And I think that also, if you're in crypto and you value privacy, which I really, really do, it's important to do that as well. So I think there's also you almost have an obligation, Graham. We have an obligation to buy the top.
Yep.
to kind of to show support for this thing that has provided, as you said, so much of the kind of underlying technology that has benefited the entire industry. So I'm just talking myself into buying some.
But you know what? Download the Zashi wallet, which is the most popular one for Zcash right now, and I'll get you onboarded.
Okay.
I'm not gonna
Okay,
send you one
Vlad's
whole
gonna send
coin.
us some Zcash.
I'm gonna be the Roger Veer for you guys.
All right.
Okay.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
I'm downloading my wallet right now. We'll talk to you later. Vlad.
Send me your address.
All right. Thanks
Okay.
again, sir. Great insights here today. And thank you, David, as well. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll catch you next week on